Welcome to the Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. It's tag time. So I had no idea what to film for the rest of this week, and in talking to Amanda, she mentioned she was doing this tag, and it sounded, interesting. So I decided to do it too. That is Once Upon Another Time tag. I will leave the creator and her video down below. And as I sat down to film this, I got my notification that Amanda tagged me in this very same video. So this is one of those great minds think alike, and I freely admit I stole doing this tag from Amanda before she ever tagged me. So I'm answering the tag, but I was doing it anyway. So does that really count? I'm going to say it counts. So there you go. This tag is limited to Christian fiction books. It's the creator's tag. She's allowed to do that, and I am sticking within those parameters. In case you're wondering if certain books aren't here. So there you go. So first up, the first question is, and all of them are in my planner. Name your favorite Christian novel from a different time. This is not going to come to a shock to any of you who regularly watch this channel. Be the Molly Chase series by Rhonda Ortiz. This is the first book, In Pieces. The second book is Adrift. And she's currently editing the third book. I love this series. You all know this. I will link my reviews to both In Pieces and Adrift in the description box down below. They are also reviewed on my blog, which as always is in the description down below. These are set in 1793 Boston. It is post-revolutionary America, and it is incredibly well researched. The language is accurate for the time. And why that sounds intimidating, it is not remotely intimidating. Rhonda has this beautiful spreadsheet of commonly used words and how often they appear in texts from the time. And some of those are simple things like contractions. How often is can't used versus cannot? So it is a meticulously researched novel. It is, as I have repeatedly said, a masterclass in how to write historical fiction. And it is the book I recommend all the time. So, not a surprise to any of you. Next question. Name a historical couple whose love would last today, or last in a different time. That is going to be Molly and Josiah from the Molly Chase series. There is great discussion in the book world about the protector male and, great examples thereof. And by far, Josiah Robb blows every other example out of the water. He has loved Molly almost his entire life. And when he first stumbles across Molly in the first book, his protective nature comes out immediately, and it does not dissipate. And by no means is his protective nature one that diminishes Molly's independence and ability to think for herself and to grow as a human being. Molly and Josiah have this love that not only withstands the troubles of their time and the situations they are in, but you could take those two people and place them in another period of history, be it today, be it further in the past, be it, 50 years in the future, and they would still love each other. That is how deep their connection is. That is how true they are to one another, and how incredibly supportive they both are of one another and those they love and care about. Molly Chase is my example for this series, for this question. And I cannot think of another couple that comes remotely close. That is how well it is written. That is how believable it is. So, question 3. Name a contemporary Christian romance couple whose love would have endured in the past. This is a much harder question for me. And I really don't have an answer, to be perfectly honest. If I thought about it, my guess would be Izzy and Brody from Authentically Izzy by Pepper Basham. And it's because their courtship began long distance and they traded written communication, text, emails, they talked on the phone, they eventually meet, but the relationship began via writing. And there is something that deeply connects two people who write. I don't know how to explain this, but you put a little bit of yourself every time you correspond with someone. And I am old enough to remember written correspondence between people and mailing letters back and forth. And those were always heartfelt. And when Dave and I were dating, we lived a couple hours apart, and we, similar to Izzy and Brody, routinely corresponded via email. Text wasn't really a huge thing back when we started. And there was always a wee piece of me in email and chat. So that would be my couple. Do I think their love would endure if they went back in time? I do, because they had or have so many things in common and a deep love of their families, and it wasn't insta love. And I think for love to endure, it has to be, this is hysterical, I say this as, someone who fell in love with her husband at first sight. Insta love doesn't work. Now, that is not always the case. I'm living proof. We've been married 20 years this year. So it does work, but I don't think it works. I think it works in real life. I don't think insta love works in books. At least it doesn't for me. Question 4. Share a favorite book setting from a different time you would enjoy. This is a interesting question, because there are many settings I would enjoy from a different time. But the question is, would I fit in said setting? And the answer 90% of the time is my sassy mouth would get me in trouble. So whether or not I would fit in said historical time period is another question. Obviously, you're not going to be surprised. 1793 Boston. Would my sassy mouth fit? Yes. Would it get me in trouble? Yes. Would I be willing to take that risk? Yes. The other choice, would be Julie Klassen's settings. They're usually Regency England, and I love, well, this one is just post-Regency England. I love Julie's writing, and I love her settings, and I know that my sass mouth would not work well in the social hierarchy of that time frame. But, you know, the historian in me and the reader in me would just love to, you know, get a glimpse of, you know, the time frame of that era. So, okay, last question. Share a Christian booktuber who you can see hanging out with a book character and why. So I've chose a couple, well, 4 Christian booktubers who I regularly watch, I regularly enjoy. If I didn't mention you, it is not a slight. It is not, you know, there's only so much time in a video, so I just picked 4 that, you know, immediately sprung to mind. First up will be Jeanette over at Jane Reads, and I am going to recommend Veiled in Smoke by Jocelyn Green. This is the first book in the Windy City Saga series. It is also the first book that book club chose to read in 2024. You can see I still have all my annotations and tabs. This is an emotional, beautiful read about family and friends and love and faith. And I highly recommend this book. I absolutely loved it. Next up would be Anne over at In Search of Wonder. And for Anne, I know she's thinking about reading this, and I'm going to go ahead and recommend it. That is Recorder by Kathy McCrum. It is the first book in the Children of the Consortium series. And I can really see Anne falling in love with this book, even though it's far outside of her comfort zone, being, you know, labeled science fiction and taking place in space. However, the found family and the friends and the romance in here is just absolutely top notch. So, yeah, Recorder. Next up would be Tay over at Tales and Treats with Tay. And I know Taylor finds physical contact in books to usually be too much for her. So I'm going to recommend The Innkeeper of Ivy Hill by Julie Klassen. This is the first book of the Ivy Hill series. And this is historical fiction. There is a wee hint of romance in it. There is no physical contact. This is a story that is about family and relationships and the small community in which they live. And it isn't about love and romance and that. So I really think Taylor would enjoy this one because there is no physical contact involved. And last up would be Amanda over at Book Lover Amanda. And I am waffling between 2 choices for Amanda, just because I know she loves historical Christian romance and she loves historical suspense. So, I am going to recommend The Inn at Ocean's Edge by Colleen Coble. This is the first book in the Sunset Bay series? Sunset Cove series. Takes place in Maine. It is light on the romance, terrific on the suspense, and a beautiful setting, and I love it. So the other book I was going to recommend for Amanda, I'm just going to leave as a general recommendation for everyone. It will even work for Tay because there is not a lot of physical contact in this romance. That is Counterfeit Love by Crystal Cadell. This is the first book in the Hearts of the Gilded Age series. This takes place in 1889 Cincinnati, 1883. And what makes this series unique is that the series follows male protagonists versus female protagonists. And this is incredibly well written. It is incredibly engaging. It is set in a unique spot for historical fiction. And I loved the mystery in here. It was so well done and it was so suspenseful. I have the other two books in the trilogy. I need to read them. I just have not had the time yet. So this is a general recommendation for everybody. I will tag, let's see. I'm not going to tag anybody. If you want to do this tag, feel free. Leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.